we are right at 5 past the hour, so we're going to get started here, and people will continue to filter in. But we are back, baby, with the 10th episode of Midweek with Max. 10 episodes deep so far. So thank you all for coming along for the ride thus far. As always, I'm Rick LaPrade, community manager here at Hemi. Mostly see me in Discord, either memeing or wrangling the intern or various other things. Typically pinging the mods to help you with your tech support issues. But I'm joined by Phil Gomes, head of marketing, and of course our co-founder Max Sanchez. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to you guys. So gentlemen, have at it.
Awesome. A lot of stuff moving this week. So we're finishing up the test and upgrade for what we're calling HVM Phase 0, which is activating deterministic HVM progression. And then once that upgrade's in, we'll be deploying the Bitcoin tunnel contracts. And so probably in the next couple of days, ideally, we'll be giving people the ability to go and test those, and we'll be adding points incentives for that. So that'll be tunneling Bitcoin to, or, testnet Bitcoin to the Hemi network and back. So that should be, the upgrade, getting that in right now, and that should be done in the next hour or so, and then deploying the Bitcoin tunnel smart contracts in the next, probably sometime this afternoon, and then deploying a UI for people to play with it later this week. And what else? I think that's the big thing. A lot of stuff on the back end, doing a lot of engineering work on monitoring for mainnet, so just being able to get better visibility of everything going on. And so making progress there. It's not fun or exciting, but something that just has to be done pre-mainnet. And what else? Been doing some stability improvements. We're working with a couple different firms now for various types of code and infrastructure audits. And so we're starting to get results back from them and going through stuff that they're pointing out for, better ways to configure infrastructure and whatnot. So nothing too interesting so far, but that is kicked off and in progress. I think those are the big updates. Phil, anything from the marketing side?
Yeah, a ton. Can you hear me? Check.
Yep, loud and clear.
All right. So this week we have a delegation of 4 at Bitcoin MENA. That's Bitcoin Middle East North Africa from the good folks at BTC Media, same folks that gave us Bitcoin Nashville in July, where we launched the testnet. We really couldn't pass it up, so we sent a group of 4 out there, including Jeff and 2 of our BizDev guys. And we're getting reports as they come in from the field. You'll see on the Twitter feed today that we bumped into the good folks at B Squared. Blockheads, they call themselves. So Blockheads meets Amigos and Amigos. Good to see. So that's probably going to wrap up our conference going for the year. We have our eye on WAGMI next year. That one is definitely on our calendar. And of course, we're submitting platform opportunities for Consensus Toronto, Consensus Hong Kong, so on and so forth. And actually, the early acceptance deadline for speaking opportunities at ETH Denver is tomorrow. So we're going to be finishing that up as well. Most of what I've been up to is, along with the PR team, making sure that the PR hits keep coming. Obviously, I think, a lot of you saw the great stuff coming out of the Cointelegraph podcast. We're looking at, for next week, The Block, as well as Bitcoin Takeover and at least a few others. Also, right now, we're looking at getting into the year-end retrospectives. So this is a time when, number one, because people like to read them. Number two, it's because it doesn't tax a editorial room too much. We're going to be participating in as many of those, again, end-of-year roundups as we can possibly get our hands on. And all of it towards evangelizing all the things that you come to Hemi for and all the things that that Hemi is good at. So we're talking a lot about security, talking a lot about interoperability, and talking a lot about the momentum that we've had since July. I did the math the other day, and we've been announcing since testnet launch, we have been announcing a partnership about once every 3.5 working days, which is actually a pretty phenomenal clip. If you go to the DeFi Llama roundup of everything from Bitcoin side chains to roll-ups, et cetera, you look at how many protocols that they have, and they've been at this for a long time. In 4 short months, we are easily within that pack. So the business development operation has been really feeding our news, our momentum, and giving people reasons to look at us, reasons to talk about us. Obviously we have to wear out quite a bit of shoe leather in order to generate business development and interest. But just as many times, people are coming to us. People are saying, "I'm really digging what Hemi is up to. Here's how we can plug in. What can we do?" And that is just absolutely amazing to see. Before going into the holidays, also keying up everything having to do with KOLs and that sort of thing, and bringing on board some content partners that I'll be happy to announce perhaps in the coming week. So a lot of great momentum. I want to do a special shout out to the community mods who have taken their skills within Discord and have started applying them out here in the X-verse, the Twitterverse. So y'all know who you are. I can't rattle them all off by memory, unfortunately. But everyone there is doing a great job. I'll post in Discord a list of the Hemigos and Hemigas list, and definitely follow that. Definitely support that group. Definitely definitely follow their lead, because of course they've been doing a great job keeping everything running from that perspective. So. With that, I'll pass it back to Master Rick for the Q&A.
Well, thank you, Bill. All right, Max, we're going to start with some rapid fires. So, are you ready?
Yep, let's go for it.
Okay. When faucet?
Hopefully soon. Again, working almost 99% of engineering resources is on mainnet stuff, and so we are planning to do something with the faucet with Deimos, but we'd rather focus on getting mainnet stable and everything done there and partners onboarded. So it is taking a backseat to that, but hopefully we'll have an update for you on that next week.
Okay, that's fantastic news. Okay, speaking of, when mainnet?
Also soon.
Perfect.
To give a little more color on mainnet, so we are launching imminently, as in next couple weeks. It may be early Q1 just because of the holiday season, having to navigate around that. So exact date TBD. We're still not even internally working from an exact date yet. There's a lot of things that have to converge. We have to get all the partners onboarded who want to be onboarded pre-mainnet. Some of them have dependency chains of, getting partner C requires partner B, and partner B requires partner A, and partner A needs something, or their people are all at a conference this week or whatever. So that's one thread that has to converge. We need to finish the technical audits that we're getting done. And so those are moving, and probably most of those will be finished by late December. So those are looking good, but those have to get done. And if they do find anything that's more than just a dependency upgrade or an integer conversion or whatever, anything actually material, we'd have to fix that. So that could take longer. And then also, obviously, the marketing, and then we have to launch into a time when people are paying attention actually at their keyboards instead of celebrating Christmas with their family. So we're mainnet soon. It's going to be, I know, the nerve of people taking holidays and visiting family and enjoying themselves.
How dare they?
How dare they? But so, yep, mainnet soon. We're trying to navigate the holiday season. So depending on when stuff comes in, when partners on board, some people are also looking at deploying TVL that they want on day one and stuff like, DEXs and lending protocols. And obviously we want to onboard them. And so that even kicks out the dependency chain further, because then the app has to be deployed. Then they have to check it. Then they have to bridge over or tunnel over, depending on how they're getting the assets to Hemi, and then actually deploy them. And then they usually want a couple days to monitor, make sure everything looks good from their side. So trying to sort out all those, but looking like either late this month or early January.
Okay, so you all heard it, that it's either late this month or early January. That is the when mainnet answer from now on, going forward. Okay. 2 more rapid fires. Is Deimos KYC?
No.
Perfect. Okay, not a problem. And the last rapid fire, when TGE?
Good question. TGE probably shortly after mainnet, as in 4 to 8 weeks, that sort of a time frame, but nothing concrete, nothing that we've committed to.
Perfect. Okay, so to summarize, Deimos, not KYC. Faucet, update, potentially next week. Mainnet, late December, early January. The team is working hard. And within 2 months-ish, TGE following the launch of mainnet.
Yeah, probably. And part of the TGE, too, is there's external things out of our control. So, to do a successful TGE, you need a lot of, you want, obviously, exchange listings early on. You want, the token to be supported on various platforms. And so there's those dependencies. And then also there's the overall, broader market. And, the current state of the market can also dictate whether it makes sense to, rush to a TGE quicker and capture energy, or, wait a little longer for the market to evolve. So a lot of external factors affect that too. It's not just how long does it take to deploy an ERC20 contract on Hemi. It's a lot of more wavy factors that we have to consider as well. So, but probably shortly after mainnet, but again, there are just a lot of factors that go into it.
So that's why when people ask these questions in Discord, we can't give concrete answers necessarily. There's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes, especially. So that's why if myself or the mods or Joshua or even the intern, if we come off a little vague, it's just because we don't want to give a non-answer or false information. So what Max just said is the most relevant and up-to-date information you can get. We will be putting this on our YouTube that you can all refer to at a later date as well. And that is the end of the lightning round. So well done, Max. 10 points or whatever points we're giving. We're not giving points. But whatever.
Finally, a points no points program.
Right. Yeah, there were no points for attending. I just want to be completely transparent. But okay, so moving on to the deluge of questions we've received. What will be the utility of a Hemi token once launched?
Good question. So the main thing, looking longer term, we're going to be decentralizing our sequencer, likely using Ethereum-style proof of stake, and we're looking at adding a fast finality gadget to that. That part aside, the token will obviously be used for participating in that consensus protocol and earning a portion of network fees and protocol emissions. We'll also be doing some other things with token staking. Exact details TBD, but there's other things in the works that'll be interesting. And it's also going to be eventually the preferred gas token of the network. So for ease of use, we're always going to let people use Ethereum as the gas token on the network like you can today. But at some point, using the Hemi token as the gas token will also get you discounts. And basically probably the way that's going to be implemented, not making promises, but the current plan, if you will, is that any fees that get paid in Ethereum will be converted through an on-chain DEX, and a fee of that will go to a DAO or something of that sort. And then the rest, the other 90% or whatever, will go to the sequencer. And if you pay directly in Hemi fees, you bypass that 5% or 10% fee, and your Hemi tokens are just paid directly to the sequencer. And so that's how you get the discount paying for fees in Hemi tokens. So not set in stone, but that's the current plan. And there will be other things along the way, but those are the kind of main items you'd want to bake into a tokenomics projection.
Okay. I apologize if this is redundant, because I feel like you did address parts of this. I just don't know if it's the whole thing. So feel free to just tell me that, next question. Will it be possible to stake the token and receive rewards from the project? And what future awaits the project? I guess that's kind of a two-parter right there.
So for the staking, pretty much what I just said, with the main thing being the sequence, participating in the network sequencing. And there will also be other places to stake Hemi tokens and do stuff with them, whether that's liquidity mining in a DEX or in a lending protocol, or staking for participating in governance, things like that. So there's going to be governance. There's going to be just things that require Hemi token liquidity. That could be revenue sources or yield sources. There's going to be obviously the sequencing. Also, one of our in-house protocols, Vesper, is a yield farming platform. So we're looking at ways to integrate them into Hemi. So that probably won't be a day one thing, because they need other yield sources. And so the DeFi ecosystem has to mature a little bit before you can deploy something like a Vesper. But we're looking at that, which would basically let you, to not get too much into the details, park Hemi tokens in a yield aggregator, and it would automatically move your tokens between different protocols, chasing different yield sources on the network as they become available. That would be separate from sequencing, but at some point we might be able to partner with somebody or create our own LST, which would then let people stake and then get an LST of the Hemi token and use that in DeFi. That'd also be further out, but a lot of stuff on that front. Stay tuned. It's going to be an evolving process between, when we initially TGE versus when we decentralize the sequencer. There's also going to be some stuff, less of an overall yield source, but for larger participants who want to be part of the Batcher proposer decentralization that will eventually come as well. That will require Hemi token staking. So there will be a lot of areas to stake tokens, but it's going to be an evolving process to get to the final state. And then overall plans, I think, sort of covered that in some sense, but looking more broadly, doing a lot with onboarding partners. So we have, if you've been following our Twitter, you've seen the huge stream of announcements of different partners who are onboarding, from DEXs to lending protocols to interoperability solutions to all kinds of other cool stuff. So that's going to be just a continuing trend. Obviously, we're trying to get a lot of that staged for a really interesting mainnet launch where there's tons of stuff to do. But post mainnet, we're going to be keeping the foot on the gas there, getting more partners, getting more interesting protocols to deploy. Longer term, with HVM, we're going to be doing a lot of programs to get people to build brand new types of applications around the Bitcoin interoperability that HVM enables. So that's going to be exciting, and that's largely post mainnet, but as soon as we get this test and upgrade finished, ideally in the next hour or so, and then later today we'll be, or maybe tomorrow, we'll see, but posting some documentation. So if anyone wants to get started developing around HVM, or even just playing with it in Remix or whatever, there will be up-to-date documentation for you to go and try that out, play around with Bitcoin Kit, play around with the HVM. So that's going to be post mainnet, putting out bounties and retroactive funding and programs of that nature to get people to build an HVM. And also a little bit longer term, but Chain Builder. I know I probably talk about this every week, but Chain Builder, basically allowing anyone to spin up a chain in Hemi's ecosystem and automatically get access to all the Bitcoin and all the Ethereum assets that are in the Hemi ecosystem, and also to pop security. So immediate, instant, Bitcoin security plus Bitcoin interoperability out of the box. And we think that'll be an attractive value proposition to anyone who's looking at launching their own, either a DApp chain, or if they want to launch an app chain for an ecosystem or whatever. Launching that in Hemi, we think, has a lot of cool features and cool access to assets and liquidity that'll make it interesting. And that'll also be if you want to talk about the project roadmap, one of the longer term things that we're working on getting bootstrapped, and also talking to a couple different partners for running one-click roll-up deployments. So being able to deploy an L3 very easily, have them manage it. Obviously, if you're doing something really technically innovative and creative and interesting on the protocol side, you would need to, launch and maintain your own infrastructure. But for people who want to just deploy, say, an app chain on Hemi that does, it's an EVM environment with HVM and POP and access to Hemi ecosystem assets, and you want to deploy a couple DApps on there and use that for, either your DApp or your trading community or whatever. We're looking at ways to make that really easy with those roll-up-in-a-box partners.
That is such a good description of what we have coming, and it's really exciting to hear that people are going to be able to start messing around with like the Bitcoin kit and the HVM, which are like two of like the earliest initiatives we started talking about, and definitely two of like the most exciting as well.
Actually, before you get to the next question, if I can jump in, Max mentioned Vesper, which is a yield aggregator, and quite rightly mentioned that to have a yield aggregator, you have to have yield sources, right? And that's why something like Vesper isn't going to be there, on day one. But not a lot of people in this audience probably know what Vesper is, and I can talk about it a little bit because I helped launch the thing. So Vesper, which you can find it in its current state and current suite of chains over at vesper.finance, is a yield aggregator, but what makes it very different is that a lot of the early protocol revenue was poured into smart contract auditing. So the smart contracts that are powering the strategies that power Vesper, we're talking like I think altogether Vesper has undergone like 50 smart contract audits, right? And it's been a long time since I've been in this hunt, but the next highest audit count was from any one of Vesper's competitors was something like 5, right? And so it was born of a time where it was like we need to have rock solid DeFi for grown-ups, and so that's all of those investments that went into helping to further bulletproof all things Vesper. All of that is going to be carried over to Hemi as a yield aggregator on Hemi. So that's an important thing I think for our community to understand. Is there is great advantage to bringing Vesper over to Hemi, not only because of its modularity, not only because of its EVM compatibility, et cetera, but the fact is that it is the most professionally examined yield aggregator smart contract code that I'm aware of, right? And again, it's been a while since I've been in that hunt, but do keep that in mind that that's what the Hemi network is getting when we bring on Vesper.
It's really good information, and also, while we're still in testnet and we have the downtime with the faucet not being active currently, it might be a really good time for people to start looking into Vesper and just kind of seeing what's on the horizon for Hemi's future, and also insert image of rapper rubbing their hands together of what big things are coming, so it's something to look into.
And also, speaking of in-house protocols, if people want to poke around and see what's on the horizon, I'll also take a look at Metronome. They let you do mint synthetic assets. Basically, you put up a Bitcoin or Ethereum or an LSD or LRT or whatever, and then you can borrow a synthetic asset against that. And so that's going to be part of our. If you're interested in looping strategies for DeFi, that's going to be at least one of the core components of that looping system.
That's also really good information because last week, I believe it was Hadu, and we had a couple other people mention looping. So that's definitely something some members of our community are into. So again, everyone, that's Vesper and Metronome. Definitely something to look into. Our next question is from Bugdog. Are there any future plans to involve users in the decision-making and direction of the project? And what are the real benefits of holding tokens?
Good question. So for involving users, we will be gradually decentralizing things, which includes handing over protocol governance to some sort of a DAO type construction. And so things like protocol upgrades, I don't want to make promises on what's going to be voted on by the DAO in what time frame, but normally projects, the goal is to get to a point where protocol upgrades, the kinds of things that are being funded from the DAO, whether that be new research initiatives or building out new technologies or whatever, those are voted on by the DAO. Things like retro PGF type funding, that could definitely be handed over to the DAO at some point, so people can decide what projects are contributing the most to the Hemi ecosystem and reward them and encourage additional development on those protocols. So short answer, yes, but it's going to take time and be a gradual process. You can't just launch and then hand over protocol upgrade decisions to a community. You need community leaders to come up who know what they're talking about, understand the protocol, have its best interests in mind. You need people to recognize those as people in the community who they can trust and get good opinions on technical upgrades and stuff of that nature. So it is a process, but it is something that we are planning to do, but exact time frame TBD obviously on that.
All right. Matt, I don't know if it was just me, but your audio started to get a little robotic, or much like me last week, if that makes any sense.
Give me 1 second.
No problem. I wish I had hold music I could play right now.
Is that any better?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I just unplugged and replugged in my mic, so.
Okay.
I think the second part of that question, benefits of holding Hemi tokens. There's a lot of different components to the Hemi token ecosystem, so that's going to depend on whether you're staking it, whether you're participating in governance, whether you're contributing to network security by being a sequencer. So more info on that soon, and we'll also be announcing gradually more details about the token economics plan, but high level, yes, absolutely, especially if you're doing things that actually participate in the ecosystem with those Hemi tokens. That was it from my end. So yeah, Hemi tokens, definitely value in holding them, but especially in the early days, things that actually participate in the protocol. So governance, security, liquidity mining, stuff of that nature.
Are we going to have HBTC, an enrolled Hemi form of BTC, and also something along the lines of like an HETH? And to further that, the gas fees on the Hemi network, will they be paid on Hemi, HBTC, or BTC itself?
Good question. So, and I'll admit our naming terminology is a little confusing here, but we did it for a good reason. So let me try to explain it. And if people have recommendations, let me know. So HBTC is basically the Hemi native Bitcoin that's brought over from Bitcoin to Hemi through our tunneling system. The equivalent to that is just ETH, which is brought over from the Ethereum network through our Ethereum tunnel system. We decided to go with a difference in terminology. So HBTC functionally, from like a technical or levels of the stack perspective, is equivalent to ETH on Hemi. Most Ethereum L2s just refer to the ETH that's bridged or tunneled over to their network as ETH. So we followed that standard, but we did want to call BTC on the Hemi network HBTC for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to differentiate that this is a new wrapped Bitcoin product in a way, not in a WBTC wrapping way, but a representative token of Bitcoin that is unique to Hemi. And we are going to be working on a way to bring that from Hemi into the Ethereum ecosystem. And so we wanted a common naming scheme that follows that token wherever it goes. So you have BTC native on Bitcoin mainnet. You tunnel it over to Hemi. It is now HBTC. And then if you tunnel it, once we build out this feature through Hemi to the Ethereum ecosystem, it would still be HBTC once it's in the Ethereum ecosystem. So then it could be differentiated between wrap Bitcoin, threshold Bitcoin, the Bitcoin LSTs and LRTs. It would be, okay, HBTC is the version of Bitcoin that comes from the Hemi network. And so it made sense from our view to call it HBTC on Hemi as well, so we have consistent naming. As far as gas fees, initially it'll be Ethereum only, kind of like it is in testnet. The plan is longer term to enable people to pay fees both in HBTC and in Hemi tokens. And the Hemi token will be the preferred gas token. Like I explained briefly earlier, you'd effectively get a discount in network fees by paying with the Hemi token that would be implemented by if you pay with either HBTC or ETH on the Hemi network for transaction fees. Those would be converted to Hemi and paid out, and there would be an extra fee charged for that conversion that gets paid to the DAO. So by virtue of bypassing that system, you'd be getting what is effectively a discount on transaction fees paying in the Hemi token. But that's not going to be immediate day one or even day one post TGE. That does require some additional work to implement that properly on the network. So it doesn't require the same kind of weird, you need ETH first to pay the transaction fee to switch your account to paying fees in Hemi tokens, which is the song and dance other networks have tried to do, and it's been a adoption hurdle. So looking at a way to do that in a more seamless manner without having to have ETH fees first, again, to pay for the transaction to convert your account into paying in Hemi or HBTC. But once all that's implemented, you'll be able to pay fees in all of them, but Hemi tokens will get you a transaction fee discount effectively.
Thank you so much for that. Here's one. It says, will those who do not do humanity verification, I'm assuming they're referring to Deimos, have their points removed, also the points obtained from referrals?
We'll announce more information on that soon. Definitely the people who do Deimos verification will be preferred because we know for a fact that they are not civil attackers. There may be some other things we can do for people who don't want to do the Deimos verification, but nothing concrete to talk about on that at the moment, but stay tuned.
Sounds good. Also, just to further on that, we do have a lot of pinned posts in general chat on Discord that you can refer to for all things Deimos information. So don't hesitate to click on those resources. I would like to know about the future uses of the NFTs, such as gold, wood, water, and fire. I'd like to say that since these NFTs are being developed, there must be some far-reaching intentions. The user also offers a suggestion that I'll read. My suggestion is whether these NFTs can be put to use, for example, by synthesizing or staking them. So I guess in broader terms, what is the future of the NFTs that we've deployed thus far, the Hemi hatchlings, and where do you see that going?
Yeah, good question. Still TBD and not really my wheelhouse, but at a minimum, they are basically representation that you were a participant early in the Hemi protocol, early on incentivized testnet. So they do have a rarity or exclusivity to them of the people who own them, or the original owners of them are basically Hemi OGs. We do have some ideas for some cool stuff to do with them, but I don't want to make any promises because that's it. Nothing's set in stone yet. But there could be something interesting around being able to give people first access, for example, to protocols that are launching and have like a cap to assets that can be deposited into them. So if we have anything that does follow that mechanic, it could be, hey, if you were an early Hemi participant, you have first dibs on putting liquidity into this new protocol. So there could be stuff like that. Maybe something in governance, but stay tuned. No concrete plans, but we are thinking about it.
Sounds good. Here's a really good one. Much like last week, feel free to humble brag. What are the advantages of the Hemi network compared to similar blockchain projects? How does the mechanism for distributing incentive to miners work?
So two parts. So advantage of Hemi over other L2s. I mean, just so we're competing in two different spaces. We're competing with really three, but two main ones is the Ethereum L2 ecosystem and the Bitcoin L2 ecosystem. So pretty much every other L2, their tethered to a single ecosystem. So they're either an Ethereum L2 or they're a Bitcoin L2, but they're not straddling those two networks. So what we're trying to do with Hemi is create an environment where it is as much a Bitcoin L2 as it is an Ethereum L2, right? And so it's aware of both protocols. You can do stuff with assets from both protocols. You can write smart contracts that interact with both protocols. And so from a competitive analysis, like I'm going to, go build a D app, where should I build it? Well, if you build it on Hemi, you have access to a ton of Bitcoin assets from the Ethereum ecosystem. You have access to Bitcoin from the Bitcoin network itself, and you have access to the entire Ethereum-based asset ecosystem, all in one place that is secured by Bitcoin and interoperable with both networks. So I think that from a why deploy a protocol in Hemi, that's a huge advantage. As far as new stuff you can build on Hemi that you can't build on other protocols, with HVM, I know I've beat this to death in probably every past AMA, but I'll do it again. HVM is a brand new way to build Bitcoin-aware smart contracts, and it's a lot more powerful than what other protocols are using if they have any sort of Bitcoin interoperability at all. So 9-10 years ago, the first Bitcoin interoperability protocol was launched on Bitcoin. It was called BTC Relay. It's basically a header relay system where somebody copies headers from the Bitcoin network, posts into a smart contract. The smart contract does some lightweight verification of them, basically tracks lightweight or kind of SPV level consensus of Bitcoin, and then you can validate that a Bitcoin transaction exists against that knowledge of Bitcoin's consensus state. So that's great. There's a lot of cool stuff you can build around that, but it is very limited. It doesn't let you look at the UTXO table, and it also doesn't let you crawl through the chain and get transactions, walk through transaction graphs, dynamically as part of a smart contract. You need somebody who's interacting with your contract to bring all of the Bitcoin transactions that are relevant. That's expensive. It's harder to develop those apps because in the UI, you have to create things where users are going and getting those transactions and fetching the data and serializing those into their transactions and sending them to the smart contract, which then has to parse those Bitcoin transactions, reference Bitcoin Relay. Whereas with HVM, you can just say, it depends on what app you're building, but if a user, send Bitcoin to an address that the protocol needs to know about, the user can just tell the smart contract, hey, I did it, go check. And the smart contract can go look on Bitcoin, look at the address, look at its UTXOs, look at, recent transactions, walk through those if it needs to see where they came from or check things about the transaction graph that resulted in those Bitcoin being moved or whatever. If you need to build a protocol that has some sort of custody system involved in it, you can look to see whether that UTXO is spent or not, which is something that it's normally with a system you can't prove negatives, or if you're proving a negative in a bounded system, it's really expensive to do because you have to look at the entire system. The Bitcoin UTXO table is not authenticated to the Bitcoin state in any way. So each Bitcoin block header, you have a Merkle root of the transactions in that block, but you have no idea what the overall state of the Bitcoin state machine is. And you can contrast that with, for an EVM chain, you can validate anything about the EVM state against that block header. So if you believe for whatever reason that a block header of an EVM network is canonical, you can prove anything about the EVM state with a Merkle path proving the state of a smart contract or the balance of an address or whatever. Bitcoin doesn't have a similar mechanism. So in order to introspect the actual full Bitcoin state machine, that UTXO table, the sum total of applying every state transition of every Bitcoin block since the genesis, with a lightweight interoperability protocol, you can't do that. Whereas with HVM, we have that entire fully indexed Bitcoin node running inside the EVM that smart contracts can look at and reference. So they can look at the UTXO table, they can look at transactions, they can walk through transaction graphs, and they can do all of that authoritatively without the users having to bring any information or any proofs on chain. So it dramatically opens up the design space for what you can build based on what Bitcoin information we're actually exposing and making available. And for apps that you could build with other interoperability solutions, it also makes those a lot easier and a lot more efficient to build. And it also removes trust assumptions or points of failure like third-party relayers, or some networks are using oracles to report data on, say, the Bitcoin UTXO table, and that basically devolves into an Oracle trust model that is also not required when using HVM for Bitcoin interoperability. So that's the big feature of what can you do on Hemi that you can't do on other networks, is anything built around that HVM interoperability technology. But even that aside, just being a L2 to both Bitcoin and Ethereum opens up tons of cool things you can do, even if you never, load the Bitcoin kit documentation in your web browser. As a developer, if you're just building standard EVM applications, you still have access to that huge pool of assets from both networks that your protocol can use as ERC20s, which is also pretty powerful. And what was the second part of that question? I got distracted.
Oh, no, you're good. The second part was, how does the mechanism for distributing incentives to miners work?
Good question. So there's going to be a couple different types of miners eventually. So initially, it's just pop mining that gets distributed by the protocol. For mainnet pre-TGE, this may be more details than people care about. We're going to be doing a system where, because we can't pay out tokens that don't exist, we're basically going to pay out an on-chain points representative. Those will be different than, and this is really important, those are different than the points in the points program on Absinthe. We may change the name and maybe call it something else to make that more clear, but basically they will be a probably non-tradable, non-transferable representative token that will then, at TGE, the system will convert over to paying out in the actual liquid Hemi token, and any points that people accumulate pop mining in mainnet pre-TGE would convert either at some predetermined ratio or based on some sort of profitability calculation. So exact details on that TBD, and we reserve the right to change that, for the benefit of people doing pop mining if we need to in mainnet, depending on how much pop mining traction we get, and if we need to change the incentives around a little bit to get people to do the amount of pop mining the protocol is looking for. But that's how the pop mining rewards will work. And then longer term, also when we decentralize the sequencer, the revenue for that will also be paid out of token emissions, and that will be done similarly by the protocol, but it will be a little bit different because sequencer payments will probably go through a slightly different system than just on-chain immediately liquid tokens getting paid out by the protocol when you do a pop transaction. But short answer, the protocol will be paying out tokens. Longer answer, it gets a little complicated pre-TGE, and there will be some differences in the actual underlying mechanics between pop mining, sequencing, eventually batching and publishing when we decentralize those roles. And then anything that's on-chain, like staking, those token payouts would be separate and wouldn't come out of the emissions pile. They would come out of, a community pile or something else that's like given to a DAO. For example, if people are staking Hemi tokens to partake in governance or something of that nature, which is obviously different than paying miners because that's not mining. But
all right, as actually I have 1.5 questions on deck. One of them goes back to kind of the lightning round. We're revisiting the lightning round, but first we'll do the related question. So will both Pop, I guess they're talking about the web miner, Pop and CLI will run in mainnet, and will they be incentivized?
For mainnet, it's going to just be the CLI, and the reason for that is the web pop miner. It's a fun tech demo, and it's a cool way to get people playing around on testnet. We don't want people using that on mainnet because of the way that it works. You basically have to store your private key in your web browser, and we thought about maybe enabling it. Short answer, you have to store your private key in the web browser, and you're putting real Bitcoin in that, which, if your browser is compromised, there could be cross-site scripting attacks or whatever, all kinds of things that would be security issues that really don't make sense to expose users to in mainnet. So we may eventually create a version of it that works with Unisat, but the problem with that is you have to sign every transaction that goes through, so you have to approve it. So it's, instead of just being able to run automatically, there'd be a Unisat pop-up every keystone, and it'd be, hey, sign this transaction, right? So for mainnet, the only officially supported version is going to be the CLI miner. We're not going to be hosting a web pop miner that works with mainnet. That could eventually change, but again, the security of it is pretty difficult to do secure key storage in a web browser in a way that, A, it's not vulnerable to attacks against our infrastructure that, say, compromise the website and do something malicious. We don't want to encourage that, or create an attack vector that incentivizes malicious people to attempt to do that. but also for users, even if there's, the website's perfectly secure, infrastructure is perfectly secure, there's always the issue of you're storing a decrypted private key in a web browser, and web browsers themselves are notoriously insecure, and there's all kinds of things in attacks, and even having plugins installed, it'd be very easy for those plugins potentially to get access to those private keys. So that's why we're not doing the web pop miner, at least initially in mainnet. There's not a tech reason beyond just the security concerns, but it will just be the CLI pop miner. As for whether it's incentivized, yes, the incentives will be different, and we'll be posting information on that soon. But like I mentioned a bit in a previous answer, basically pre-TGE, the pop mining is going to get rewarded with an on-chain point, or on-chain through an on-chain point system. That'll be separate from the absinthe point system, so those points are not comparable. The pop points are a specific different bucket of points, and those will convert over in some manner at TGE.
Sounds good. We're gonna try this question in a real weird way, so bear with me here, Max. Okay, we'll do it in like a Jeopardy style. I believe the answer is stay tuned. It's a question you get every week by 1 to 2 users. What do you think the question is?
Well, we already had Faucet and mainnet.
Faucet and mainnet.
Is this the Bearblock question?
Sir, you're amazing. It is.
Yep. Stay tuned. Coming soon.
Love it. Okay. There you go, Poison. Stay tuned. Here we go. I've one more question on deck, and that actually clears the queue. So does Hemi convert points? Since I mainly dug Hemi early on, and if so, what would be the conversion ratio?
No, points are the only thing that matters. So if you were getting Hemi because you were doing pop mining, you'll also be getting points for that. So focus on the points, not the Hemi. If you were acquiring Hemi in some other way, and I think people know what I'm talking about, that was not a good idea. We told people not to do it, and there will not be points for Hemi that you acquired through other means. But if you were doing pop mining, and that's why you have Hemi, you'll be getting points for that. So that's the part you should care about.
Sounds good. I'm going to turn things over to Phil because I believe we have some hands raised.
Yeah, so this will be a first for Midweek with Max on Spaces. We've got a couple of potential audio contributors here, so let me bring Shogun on stage. You have to accept the invite there, Shogun. All right, unmute and you're good to go. All right, a little bit of stage fright. We've got one more, though. We've got one other one in the queue. Ahaba, let's bring you up on stage. I guess that's it then.
All right.
Oh wait, no, there he is. Ahaba Ajaj, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Go ahead and unmute. I still can't hear you. Okay, he's on mute. Still can't hear him. All right, Shogun is back. Let's try him.
To be fair, Twitter Spaces with microphones is pretty difficult to get working. We had our own problems last week.
This is true, yes.
It is a bit of a hellscape, if I'm being honest.
It's been great for our audience development, though. I mean, this is just the marketing guy speaking. But Shogun, you're on stage. Still showing as muted.
We can see your hand raised, Shogun. You just need to unmute, and then you have the stage.
All right. I'm sorry about that. I thought you actually talked about someone else to speak on the stage. Thank you so much for having me on the stage. How you guys doing? And I'm fascinated by Hemi, and I've been part of the ecosystem, and I'm trying to interact on your product and services at the same time. So what caught my interest is to see that your protocol actually stands out in a way. Why is that? Because Bitcoin is now having that euphoria moving on in the future. So your platform, should we be able to see that your platform can able to, let's say for instance, I have Solana and I want to swap it to BTC. Let's say I have SUI, I want to swap it to BTC. Then I want to swap BTC back to Solana. Are we going to see such interaction in the future on your platform? So that's the question I want to ask.
Cool. Good question, and appreciate the excitement. So we're initially mainly focused on the Bitcoin and Ethereum assets. We are going to be Layer 0 will be deploying on the network, and we also have a couple other interoperability protocols that are interested in deploying, although those are more in the Bitcoin LRT, LST ecosystem. So presumably you would be able to do a swap between something like Solana and HBTC or one of the Bitcoin LSTs or LRTs through a DEX like Sushi with one of their Layer 0 based cross-chain swap protocols. So for other networks, that should be possible, but it depends on the liquidity pairs we incentivize and have liquidity for. So I'd say high level, yes, maybe not mainnet day 0. The focus is primarily on Bitcoin and Ethereum assets, so creating a lot of liquidity between Bitcoin LSTs and LRTs, our own HBTC, and stable coins and Ethereum. But longer term, yeah, that should be supported through something like a Layer 0. And longer term, if we want to get really out there and crazy, the way that we built HVM as an architecture of building, going from being an L2 to one chain to being an L2 to two chains is pretty difficult. But once you do that, you have basically the framework to add in additional chains as other, L1s that you're natively connected to. We probably wouldn't do that at the Hemi base layer. But one of the cool things that we could potentially do with the L3 ecosystem is letting L3s, basically the same way that Hemi straddles Bitcoin and Ethereum, other L3s could straddle Hemi on one side, and then another network like Solana is particularly difficult to do this with because they have such ridiculous node requirements. But, theoretically, a Solana or an Avalanche or whatever could be added as, an L3 could basically be an L2 to those chains and bring them in to the Hemi ecosystem through the chain builder network. But that would be, much longer term, much farther in the future.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. And another question I wanted to ask is that so in terms of the community, in terms of incentivizing and in terms of rewarding, I know in some points the community gets to understand the interaction of interacting with your product and the swap and the whole having that experience in the testnet phase. But I needed to understand when the mainnet comes and we have, by God's grace, the allocation and all, are they set stages in phases that can make the community say, okay, I wanna hold my my tokens, aside from just staking, aside from just maybe owning an NFT, or I just need to know what are the value proposition of holding our tokens, on the long term.
Yeah, good question. I already covered some of this, but to recap, maybe give a bit more detail. Basically, the Hemi token is going to be the official ecosystem token, so it's going to be used for a lot of things, and a lot of those are going to involve staking. So the most kind of on-the-nose one is being part of the Hemi sequencer network. And basically, if Hemi's business model is as chain infrastructure, basically, providing this L2 that straddles Bitcoin and Ethereum is a great place for people to launch dApps that touch both of those networks, do interesting things. And if we do that job right, there should be a lot of demand for using Hemi to, trade and stake and borrow and lend Bitcoin and Ethereum assets. Obviously, there's a lot of cool stuff with HVM as well. And once protocols start building around that, if any of those protocols get traction and interest and a lot of people using them, that creates more protocol revenue. And then that basically, in order to create that ecosystem, we need to decentralize. Well, in order to sustain that ecosystem long term, we need to decentralize the sequencer, which basically means turning over that protocol revenue to users who help secure the network and keep it decentralized. And those users would have to use the Hemi token and stake it to be one of those validators on the network. And so Hemi's basically, the Hemi token will be powering the Hemi ecosystem, and any value that Hemi's creating for users from the Bitcoin and Ethereum ecosystems, that should convert into on-chain activity, which converts into essentially protocol revenue, which is then getting distributed to the people who are using Hemi tokens to secure and operate the network. So that's kind of the macro tokenomics perspective. There's also going to be governance. So there will be, staking Hemi tokens to participate in governance, and, choosing what protocols get funded by the DAO, stuff of that nature. So that'll be another consumptive use case of, not consumptive, but another use case of the Hemi token that will require holding it and staking it for a period of time. And participants in DAO governance presumably would be getting some sort of revenue share out of that as well. We're also, this is a little longer term, but the way we're looking at building staking on the Hemi network is what we're kind of internally coining the term converged staking, which is borrowing ideas from the LST, LRT world and saying, instead of having a governance system where that's, entirely siloed from, staking to be part of consensus, or staking to perform, the batcher and publisher role, and we decentralize those, or, staking Hemi tokens for economic security in a protocol. Let's converge all those into one system where you stake Hemi tokens once and you choose which of those pieces of the protocol you want to opt into. So we'll see if that, it's kind of a grand vision, and there's some technical hurdles to actually get there. But that's the long-term plan would be kind of this converged staking system. You put in Hemi tokens, you decide what parts of the protocol you want to participate in, you get revenue based on what parts you're actively contributing to the ecosystem in, and a large driver of that will be the protocol revenue that Hemi should be attracting by providing interesting dApps and good liquidity for people to interact with from both the Bitcoin and Ethereum ecosystems.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And
Absolutely.
I want to say congratulations in advance for your mainnet launch. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's going to be exciting. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, guys.
And,
thank you so much, Shogun. With that, though, we are right about the top of the hour and running a little over. I apologize. X kicked me out again. That's the third time it kicked me out. So that's fun. But with that, thank you all, as always, for joining us. Quick shout out to our community moderators who are doing a fantastic job, including our meme god intern, Ajit, Alex, Avi, Creator, Foxstar, Funky, Hadu, Koki, Lyco, No Tears, Yahoos, and YYG. So thank you so much, guys, for all your contributions, and thank you all for attending. I'll turn it over to Phil and Max for a brief outro, and we'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Huge shout out to the community moderators, as usual. Thanks for making Rick's life not as horrible as it could be. And we'll see you all next week.
And from my end, again, this is the highlight of my week, and I see that in the audio we've got 3 people with requests to speak. I've screen grabbed it, and so we've got your names, and you're going to be first in line next week. All right. And with that,
All right, cool.
I
Thanks,
think
everyone.
we're out. Cheers.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Ciao.
See you in Discord.
Bye.